What's up? In this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to crack into a little discussion on the residency interview and some of the things that really helped me. I'll give you guys 5 tips that helped me kind of ace my interviews and things that I thought made me stand out in comparison to all the other people. Because everybody you're going to be interviewing with is going to be smart, they're going to be talented, they're going to have good scores and good grades, they're going to come from good schools. So what makes you different? What's going to make you stand out when the residency director is looking to make their list for ranking? Alright guys, so my first tip. The first tip I have is that you already received the interview. The people that looked over your application already think you're a good candidate. The program likes you. They want to see what kind of person you are. So remember, relax during the interview process and relax during the interview day. Because what they're trying to see in most cases here is not what is your medical knowledge, what kind of resident are you going to be necessarily, like what is your skill set at this point, you know, how well can you interview a patient. What they're really trying to see, what they're going for, is they want to know, how are you going to fit in here? How are you going to interact with the staff? How are you going to interact with attendings? How are you going to interact with your fellow residents? And are you going to get along? Do you have the kind of personality that's fun, slightly outgoing, you know, hardworking? They're looking for you to demonstrate those qualities while they're on your interview day. They want you to be interested, they want you to be engaged, and they want you to show the reasons why you would be an excellent fit. So with that said, display your personality. Show them the kind of person that you are and how you will interact with people and how you're going to go about being an excellent resident in their program. Because ultimately, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for goodness of fit. And most of my interviews, at least the ones that I really enjoyed, were the ones that did not have me answering stupid stock questions or giving me patient scenarios or anything like that. They were the ones where we just had a genuine human conversation, interaction between two people, and just discussed general things about life philosophy, our philosophies on life, things that interest us, and I always tried to take something that I thought was unique about myself and interject it into the conversation, especially with the program directors, with anybody actually that you're interviewing with. So again, first tip, take a deep breath. Relax. It's not that big of a deal. It seems like it is now while you're going through it, but the reality is you're going to have a lot of interviews, you know where you stand, and you just have to show them why you'd be a good fit. So tip number 2, right? So for tip number 2, my suggestion is, and I think everyone should do this regardless, go out, get the interview questions that are commonly asked. You can find a list anywhere, just Google commonly asked residency interview questions, whatever, or your school usually provides you with some kind of list of questions, and go through those questions, type out a response in a Word document for each and every one of those questions. It's a little tedious, it's a little long, but what it does for you is it really sets your frame and it allows you to get your points in line. Because the worst thing you could do is show up to the interview and not have your points in line. Like for instance, someone asks you, tell me about yourself, and you can't tell them anything about yourself, or you're fumbling around and you're not sure what to say. Get yourself a basic outline. Give yourself something. You know, I don't suggest you memorize the responses that you're going to write, but I do suggest that you at least work through the responses and spend some time reading them over so that when someone asks you a particular question, your points are there in line in general. Now, you may adapt it depending on the circumstances, depending on the particular person you're interviewing with, but the general gist of what you want to say is well thought out and well organized. So that's a key point. I think everybody should do that. Piggybacking off of this same idea, make sure that you know something about the program you're interviewing at, especially if you're coming from another location. Say you live in New York and you're interviewing in Michigan. Well, they're going to ask you for sure, why do you want to come to Michigan? You're from New York. Your family's in New York. Everybody you know is in New York. You trained in New York. So why come here? What makes us different? Now you better have a damn good response. because they're going to be interviewing people surely from Michigan who are equally competitive and equally good candidates. So be sure that you're looking at that and you know something about the program, and you could say, you know what, I'm choosing this program because you have an excellent track record in dealing with bipolar disorder, and I'm really interested particularly in research about bipolar disorder. Whatever your thing is, it doesn't matter. Point being is, find some good reason, logical reason for wanting to be at that particular program, because if you don't, it's going to look weird. They're not going to be able to really kind of hit it off with you and connect with you, because again, this is their home, this is their program, this is what they do. So have good answers. Do your research on the program. Do your research too on the program director, assistant program director, other attendings that might be there. Look at some of their published work. If they've been on podcasts, listen to the podcast. If they've done other things, if they've been at conferences, try to find information, try to find write-ups, whatever you can that's going to help you do the intel on these people, so that when it comes time to talk to them, again, you have points in line. Oh, by the way, I really love that paper you did on bipolar disorder in adolescent patients, whatever the case is. Right now, we have a talking point, we have a commonality, and it's going to go a long way in getting that person to remember me as a candidate. And again, it shows a hell of a lot of interest in that particular person and their program. So, third tip. You need to set yourself apart from the crowd, because there's going to be a bunch of people with you on interview day, probably 10, 12 other people at least, and you're all going to be kind of competing for the same couple of positions. Maybe it's 3 positions, maybe it's 2, maybe it's 5, who knows what it is. Point being is, you're going to be competing with those people for the same position. Now, you want to set yourself apart. The whole key to the residency interview, I feel like, is they put a face to the name in the application, and it better be even, and you have a chance to either enhance your chances of matching there or reduce your chances. Because again, if you look really, really great on paper and then you show up and you're flat and you're boring and people don't really connect with you, or you're socially awkward, it is not going to work for you. You are going to lose points. You may not match that residency. However, if you're not a great applicant, right, maybe your scores are a little lower, maybe your grades are a little lower, maybe you don't have the greatest credentials, whatever. This is your opportunity, if you've been accepted for the interview, to go in and show like, hey, I'm more than this. I'm bigger than this, and I could do a hell of a lot more. So it's a really, really excellent opportunity for you to shine and for you to show some things that set you apart. So with that said, find something in your application that makes you slightly different. I'll give my personal example that I like because it worked for me very well. And that was, I had written a narrative in medicine kind of piece. So if you don't know what that is, basically it's like a patient encounter that you have that's very impactful, and you talk more about the emotions that you experienced and the way it made you feel to interact with that patient, rather than the technicalities of like, what did you do, what kind of treatment, etc., right? So I would keep that with me. It was published in a small journal, small narrative in medicine journal, nothing too fancy, but I kept a copy of it with me, in my folder. And I would bring it in, and I would usually like to use it on, especially program directors, assistant program directors. I would show them this, and I would say, this particular encounter really made a big impact in my choice of psychiatry as a specialty. It changed the way I thought about these patients, and it really made me feel like the work I was doing was important and like I was making a difference in people's lives. And not only could I say those things, but I had the paperwork to back it up and the publication to back it up. So, and again, not everybody's writing narrative in medicine about their patient encounters. Most people are not. So I thought this was one of the things that helped set me apart. I would also carry around with me my research and any kind of and one of my poster presentations as well. So research paper plus poster presentation, just to kind of show these people like, hey, look, I'm engaged, I'm doing things, I'm out there at conferences, I'm interacting, I care about psychiatry, and I want to make it awesome, right? And that's the kind of thing that I wanted to display to the program directors that I was interacting with. So make sure you have something. Now, it may be a previous job experience, it may be volunteer work that you've done, it may be a company that you started, it may be an educational initiative that you invented. Whatever the hell it is, it doesn't matter. Just make sure it's different than all those other people, because you need to, again, separate yourself from the pack. And so getting down to the nitty gritty here, tip 4. So with tip 4, what I'm going to say is dress to impress, right? It's a stupid saying, whatever, but the point is you want to dress to impress. Most of the people you're going to be interviewing alongside of other candidates are all going to wear the basic, safe things that they figure is going to be conservative enough and look good enough, right? So they're going to choose black suit, black shoes, black tie, it's like that song, right? They're going to go with the basic stuff. They're going to go with basic outfits, kind of blend in. It's better to fit in than stand out type of mentality. Now, that's fine. You can't go wrong doing that, right? Because you're going to look pretty good in that outfit. You're not going to stand out, but you're going to look good. You're going to be conservative. People will respect that regardless. However, my suggestion is you add a little bit of flair to your clothing game, right? Because if you just keep it real simple like that, you're going to look like everyone else. So I'll tell you what I did, which I think went a long way. It was a little different, but not too crazy to the point where like I wasn't rocking like a pink suit or anything stupid like that. But I went out and I got a bright navy suit. And if you look at that color, like if you Google it or whatever, it's a little bit lighter than the traditional navy blue suit, and the color really pops. The color really stands out, and it really goes well when you accessorize with browns. So I used like a nice pair of light brown shoes, a nice light brown wristwatch, leather band for my wristwatch, and I used a brown leather belt also, which again, all kind of just put this suit together real nicely. I mean, I went with a white shirt and a bright navy mixed kind of tie that wasn't too flashy, but it was flashy enough, right? And the point is, I can't count how many compliments I got from program directors, from other people that I was interacting with during the interview day, residency coordinators, other faculty. And it was something that was simple, and it just made me stand out that little bit. It wasn't so much that people were like, hey, this guy looks like a fool, he's got way too much crap on, it's a joke. But it was enough that, again, in their minds, I start to be remembered. They're like, hey, this guy wore that really nice suit. You know that guy that was the sharp dresser? He looked good on interview day. I remember that suit. It was interesting. It was unique, right? That goes a long way, in my opinion. Because, again, it's all about you standing out, you being slightly different. Not so much different that they're like, wow, this person couldn't possibly be here in our program, but different enough that they're going to be like, all right, this person is interesting and unique and will make an excellent addition to our residency program. That's what you're trying to do. All right, guys, and the final tip, it's been a long one, tip number 5, what I think helped me a lot on my residency interview days. One is people will go back and forth about the thank you letter. They'll say, you should handwrite your thank you letter, and then someone else will say, oh no, you should type your thank you letter and send it via email. It doesn't really matter, in my opinion, all that much. What I will say, though, is I think email is preferable for a couple of reasons. One, everybody checks their email all the time. So you have a great ability to get that email out to those people very fast. And again, I think that shows interest. So like shortly after my interviews, usually on my plane rides home or my car rides home, I was already working on those thank you notes for the people that I interacted with on my residency interview day. Right? On my interview day, I was already plotting and planning, getting those thank yous written out so that when I got home from the plane ride or the car ride or whatever, I was ready to go and submit those and get them right to the people that I interacted with. Again, it shows interest. It shows you really care. What kind of person is doing that? The kind of person who really wants to be at that program, right? So that was one thing. The other one is that when you're having conversations with anybody on the day of the interview, anybody, and especially the people you interview with, get something personal from each person that you can include in the thank you letter. You say, oh, program director, remember when you and I talked about our dogs and I was telling you I had 2 pit bulls at home and that they were, they get a bad reputation from people, but really they're just these beautiful, fun-loving dogs. And then you were telling me about your husky at home and how much you love your, like something that's a genuine human connection that you two connected on. It could be anything. The dog example is just one example. It could be something related to psychiatry. It could be something related to philosophy of life. It could really be absolutely anything, but it has to be something that you truly connected on. Another one that really worked well for me was the connection I had with one of the program coordinators regarding music choice. So I had like wrote on the bottom of my on the bottom of my CV that I was, one of my interests and hobbies was like listening to classical rock music or classic rock music, right? And she said, "Oh, I see you wrote that on the bottom of your CV. Who are some of your favorite artists?" So I started rattling off some of the people that I enjoyed listening to, and she was telling me about how she really enjoyed John Lennon and David Bowie, and I was like, "Oh, okay, Under Pressure, it kind of reminds me of Interview Day," and we were just kind of hit it off, talking about music, going from there. And I knew for sure to include that in my thank you note. And when I got a response from her regarding that thank you note, she said, "This is one of the best thank you notes I've ever received. It's personal, it's interesting, it was fun, and again, it reminds them of that impactful conversation that you had." And hopefully it was truly impactful in their life and they do remember it. Because they may not. However, again, I think you can tell when you're having a conversation with somebody how that conversation's going and whether or not they're really getting something out of it. So those are pretty much my 5 tips. If you guys enjoy the video, if any of this stuff is helpful, I want you to comment, I want you to like it, I want you to subscribe, and I'll continue to try to get better and grow as a presenter myself, okay?